This week on Nigeria Decides, the suspension of Nigeria's highest-ranking judge gains international attention and a presidential rebuttal. Ambode's final humiliation, will they really impeach him before he goes? And are the PDP in Ekiti in a state of disarray? We'll discuss these stories and much more on Nigeria Decides. Hello and welcome to Nigeria Decides. I'm Juliana Olayinka. Joining me on the panel this week are political analyst Chief Philip Agbeshe, international trade and investment advisor Agnes Gitau, and CEO of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit, Chief Bimbo Folayan Roberts. Welcome, nice to see you guys. My first panel, my first ever Nigeria Decides. Let's hope it's a good one. Now, the saga surrounding the decision to replace Nigeria's highest-ranking judge has sparked an international outcry. Justice Walter Onagun was suspended just 3 weeks ahead of the general election following allegations that he failed to declare his assets, which is a legal requirement. Now, both he and his replacement, Acting Chief Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, have been asked to respond to allegations of corruption and professional misconduct by the National Judicial Council, the NJC. Now, before we discuss this in more detail, earlier I spoke with Honourable Abike Dabiri Erewa, the Deputy Director of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, who had this to say.
The #1 law officer of Nigeria was found with various bank accounts. And in his deposition, he said he forgot to declare those monies and assets. He forgot. That's your #1 law officer. Now, the Code of Conduct Tribunal wrote to the president and said, well, we need to proceed with this matter. Let this guy step aside. Suspension, not removal. He's the chairman of the Judicial Council. You can't be a judge in your own case. Look, you are here in the UK, all because some parliamentarian or your public official, politician, whatever, sleeps with a woman, not his wife. He leaves the job.
Of course, but
look,
there's a process.
No, I'm telling you the process. So
yes.
This process was, look, it wouldn't even happen. It's even an embarrassment that it is happening.
It's the time, isn't it, Honourable?
No.
Are you surprised that people are saying it's too close?
What do you want a responsible president to do? When it was discovered, it should look the other way? Come on. Look, Kemi Adeosun,
the former Minister
of Finance, under this administration, resigned her appointment. You know? So the Chief Justice should have saved us the trauma. You should have just stepped aside, let the matter be investigated. If you're guilty, there are consequences. If you're not guilty, you continue your job. So what President Buhari has done is morally right, it is legally right. Look at Section 11 of the interpretation of the Act they are quoting. Even this same Chief Justice ruled in 2013 about the powers of the CCT Code of Conduct Tribunal. So really, I think they issued that statement without dealing with the substance of the matter.
I quoted the British High Commission, but there's also been outrage by the EU and also the US. They've also condemned Buhari's removal of the Chief Justice.
Well, as the case progresses, they will realize that they were hasty in their judgment. We're going to watch events unfold. They will realize that they were hasty in their judgment. Some things have to be done, and it just has to be done.
I must say that is an unsurprising statement coming from a senior figure within the APC. But listening to a lot of the reports and a lot of the critics of the removal of the Chief Justice isn't whether or not he's guilty. The reports and the outcry come to whether or not Buhari had the right to remove him. Some people are saying it was a coup against the judiciary.
Judiciary is an independent institution. I see no reason for politicians to get involved in this. And I absolutely agree with Chief here that was it legal? Yes. Was it Was it legal? No. Was it right or ethically correct? Yes. Buhari is the leader of Nigeria. He had every right to suspend him. Remember, he hasn't been removed. He's just been suspended. But also on the criminal matters, we do not know for sure. These are just
we're still waiting for him to respond to the allegations.
But suddenly, if you have such allegation, he would have, as a credible man, he should have just resigned, or
he should have resigned. But it's the importance of the election. Let's not forget, this happened just 3 weeks.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. If it didn't matter,
I think it does matter.
It does matter. The timing is everything.
Nigeria is a member of the international community, and we have to do things properly.
Yes.
And there are lots of times when we have crises in Nigeria that are just simply crises that are contrived, created by the politicians. So this is an offense that's been committed long ago, and the timing of the suspension is faulty. It's morally right for Mr. President has...
We can all agree it's morally right.
One of the cardinal programs of this present government is to deal with corruption. So everybody agrees with that. But the procedure, see, we live in a society where we have to follow the rule of law. So it has to be done, it has to be seen to be done properly. But in this particular case, I think the timing is very wrong. Election is just about 2 weeks away. And now this is going to have some impact on that election, regardless of what happens. Now the situation has been created that the person that has been put into suspicion.
Whether or not you agree, let's talk about the British High Commission. They've actually said that this movement has set Nigeria back, not just internationally, but domestically for the election. Agnes, people are protesting on the streets of Abuja. They're calling this a coup against the judiciary. It's a very big story, whether or not we want to underplay it.
There were protests on both sides.
Yes.
There were protests on both sides.
True.
Yes. And we must be very fair to Nigerians who have participated in this protest.
Of course.
People protested. So as a matter of fact, if the High Commissioner, if the embassies have taken position with one side of the protest, it is wrong.
Absolutely
if
wrong.
You are,
not just Britain, the US and the EU.
It doesn't matter.
Yes,
the international community should
They took side. Because I know, for instance, my friend here talked about Femi Falana. So many eminent Nigerians have spoken for and against the subject matter.
Yes.
So on what basis did the international community take side with one party over and above the other? It is wrong. But I welcome, as a citizen of Nigeria and as a global citizen, I welcome every foreign intervention in my country. Because for a good team, you must have spectators, you must have fans, and people who are watching should be able to say something. But whatever they are saying, it should not amount to people who have come to the stadium to watch football match now throwing stones into the feed.
I agree with you, Chief. They had it's not their right.
Because
it's up to Nigerians. We have one president. Buhari is the president.
He's not a dictator.
He's not a dictator.
You're saying we have one president, but surely he's not a dictator. There is due process.
But the man who has been, Chief, if I may, the man who has been suspended, there are allegations against him, and he clearly says he forgot.
Okay, let's talk about
to follow the
Chief Bimbo. Let me bring you in this. Let's talk about the allegations. Nigeria's war on corruption. Are we going to say the Chief Justice is the only person that
we have to start somewhere?
So is he being used as a scapegoat?
One of the major programs of this government is one of their cardinal programs is to deal with corruption in Nigeria, and that should be applauded by everyone.
Of course.
So Nigeria has been in a mess, and the judicial arm of government is, as well as the executive, and even the legislature, very corrupt, in my own view. There's been a lot of corrupt activities and all that. So the government is doing very well. You see, when we try to link the two, I think what we're doing is that we're bringing corruption, we're bringing confusion. We're linking this particular suspension with the fight against corruption. I think they're completely different. Because in this situation, we're bringing confusion into it. What we are talking about is the process. Regardless of, it's like somebody comes to your house to steal, and maybe steal some money in your house, and then you start to beat him or give him dead blows. You're still in the wrong. You're in the wrong in spite of the fact that you found him.
In some countries.
In some countries. So in some countries. But even if it's in Nigeria, so what they do in Nigeria is what's called mob justice.
Yes.
If somebody is called a thief in the public space, people lynch him.
And of course, including myself and many of our viewers, it's undeniable that, the highest ranking judge in Nigeria was lied
What
or
does
said
that
he
show?
forgot or
But,
said
yeah.
or said he forgot, and that's very, very serious and something that, you know, he has to be dealt with. But do you think, and lastly before we go to the break, do you think this decision to remove him so close to the election, and don't forget that, you cannot forget that it's so close to the election, do you think that it will have detrimental consequences to the
Absolutely not.
result?
No, the answer is no.
No. You see, yeah, we should even be scared for the judiciary if Mr. Onoge continues to sit as the Chief Justice of Nigeria. A man who can forget over £1 million in his account undeclared. Are we not afraid for how many judgments he has passed that he did not remember the fact before writing the
absolutely. Very
judgment?
well put.
It's a great threat to our democracy. People like Onoge should not even exist, you know, in our society. Because this is 2019. We got our independence in 1960. So for the Chief Justice of Nigeria to be involved in an issue like this, to the extent that he will forget over £1 million. £1 million.
It's a lot of money. We'll take a quick break now. We have a lot more to discuss, so please join us in a few moments. Hello and welcome back to a lively Nigeria Decides. I'm Juliana Olayinka and I'm pleased to welcome back our panel. Political analyst Chief Philip Agbeche, International Trade and Investment Advisor Agnes Gitau, and CEO of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit, Chief Bimbo Folayan Roberts. Now, the global anti-corruption watchdog Transparency International has ranked Nigeria 27 out of 100 in terms of perceptions of public sector corruption in its annual report, concluding that Nigeria neither improved or progressed in the perception of corruption in 2018. Let me ask our adopted Nigerian sister here. Agnes, are we bound to fail in these rankings? Is it just something, if there's a statistic, whether it's poverty capital of the world, corruption, is Nigeria and Africa just bound
Not at all.
to fail?
Not at all. And I must say, I'm very surprised because I was expecting to see a bit of progress in Nigeria's fight against corruption based on the fact that this administration, Buhari's administration, came on a platform of fighting corruption. But it's a shame, a country, I mean, look at our conversation before. Chief Justice has an account with over $1 million. A country which a country which is ranked one of the poorest in the world, if not in Africa, where citizens live below minimum wage of $1. It's unbelievable. And fight against corruption must be led both from the political leaders and the industry leaders, because it takes two to tango.
Of course it does. And I agree with you there, Agnes. Chief Bimbo, let me bring you in. I don't want to go back to our heated discussion in part one, but if we look at somebody like Onogun, you know, and the fight against corruption, is it just about the individuals, or it's endemic, isn't it? You know, I was at a private briefing at Chatham House, and they said that this fight against corruption isn't an individual and an individual. It's the entire system in Nigeria that needs to change.
This is where the problem is. The politicians have so created an environment that makes things look like it's individuals. It's not individuals. Corruption in Nigeria is endemic. It's become a way of life. There's a need for a complete mind shift, mindset change in Nigeria. Because there's a way in which an average Nigerian lives and believes that he has to make extra money beyond the normal income.
That's
so
true.
This is why when we talk about Onogen shouldn't be the issue. If we really want to fight corruption in Nigeria, we have to go into the Nigerian. The EFCC was set up, and you know the EFCC is doing a very good job. As far as I'm concerned, they're doing fantastic work. They're prosecuting people, they're getting results, failing in some instances. You know why they're failing? They're also failing because some of the people that are supposed to pursue the cases are compromised. Maybe the judiciary.
Well, of course.
Or maybe even the police.
And we've been seeing that in the reports of this week.
So with regards to our position on the Transparency
Index,
I would say it takes time.
it takes time.
It's not something
But
we're not going to see.
are we getting
impact.
there?
I think we're moving in that
We're
direction.
moving there.
I
Chief
think so.
Agbeche, I know you've
I
been
think
shaking,
so.
ready to talk. Oh yeah, let's go.
No, well, for me, the Transparency International report and other recent reports, particularly comments by the diplomatic community in Nigeria, are just some sort of contradictions. Yes, because, okay, take for instance...
Are we rid of corruption in Nigeria?
No, we are not. But you see, Transparency International is telling us today that there will not be any improvement. But for instance, this is the first time since 1999 that Transparency International report is not pushing Nigeria high on the ladder of corruption.
Okay.
That is to say that there have been something is stabilizing. I am not corrupt, and I know very well that we have quite a large number of good Nigerians. It was in Nigeria recently that an airport worker who earns less than 50,000 naira, less than 100 pounds, found about $1 million and returned to the government.
Was
and
it
the
Onogo's $1 million?
No, it was not Onogo's $1 million. It was also in Nigeria that the whistleblowing law is making impact. Who are the people revealing the corrupt people? They go to people's farms, they find money, and they report to government. These are monies that could have been taken by these people, but they haven't done that.
I think it's perception. We need to define what is corruption. If giving an airport worker $10 because you're happy with the services, is that corruption? If I give
That's not corruption. What if he asked you for those? What if he asked you for that?
If I ask you, can I borrow your pen?
Chief, let Agnes
so
finish.
if I ask, can I borrow 10? Will you help me with $10? And you give me, I haven't forced you. That's not corruption. So I think the problem with Africa, perceived as a corrupt continent, it's more perception than what it actually happens. And yes, indexes like Transparency International, which I'm happy to say Obe Ezekweli was one of the founders of this institution, they are good because they push us to do better.
Yes.
We cannot excuse bad governance. We cannot excuse corruption, not at all. But it has to be tried. I think Nigeria has done well, and it's not corruption is not homogenic to Africa and Nigeria.
Chief people, have we moved on since former Prime Minister David Cameron said we are a fantastically corrupt nation?
Okay, so let me put it this way. One thing that sets us apart as a nation is that most Nigerians are very proud of their country. They love their country so much, they don't want anything negative said about them. But I'm a realist, okay? The realistic thing is that the corruption in Nigeria is endemic. And I say this to you. This is, no, let me finish. It's not just bureaucracy. It's even within the populace. I can give you examples upon examples upon examples. And the reason people like us come out and say it is because I'm not a politician. I don't need anyone voting for me. And the truth has to be said. The corruption level in Nigeria is unbearable. And it's not just government.
But is it getting better?
Not just government.
Is it getting better?
So
very briefly, is it getting better?
Yeah, it's getting better.
It's getting better.
Yeah, it's getting
let
better.
me quickly ask you, because you're going to be giving a briefing at the Royal African Society. Is corruption still high on the agenda? Is this palpable when they talk about Nigeria?
Can I tell you something?
Please.
One of the things that we'll not be discussing about, a briefing on Nigeria will be corruption. We are looking at some of the factors, both economic and political factors.
But corruption gets into all of those. It leaks into those industries.
We exhaust or we tire an African debate because the minute you mention an African country, the first thing that comes out is poverty and corruption. We need to move away from it. You asked, is Nigeria moving on? From my own perspective, yes, Nigeria is moving on, and it has done very well under the current administration. And I think there has been clear signs to show that public officers must be able, must be credible.
Man must be accountable.
Yes, must be accountable, certainly.
Chief Ezekweli, do you think the government are accountable? APC, PDP, one of the same.
Yes, they've not been PDP at the central level for the past 3 years. But come to think of the recent saga around Justice Onoge, the highest law officer, for me, it is a step in the right direction. Because this is the first time in our country that the legislator, the executive arm of government, and the judiciary are no longer in that conspiracy against the masses of the country. It is a very healthy thing for our democracy because it is now time for Nigerians to begin to see their country as their own, as a place and a home.
What does this have to do with corruption?
Yes, good. For instance, government could easily perceive a political enemy as a corrupt person, and they send you to the court, and because they are working together, in less than 90 days, you are sent to prison. But today, that is no longer the case. The judiciary is not no longer in that conspiracy. And the case with Justice Onoge, because the president could have simply sat down at the villa, had wine with Justice Onege, and say, my friend,
I don't think the president drinks wine. Chief Bimbo, let's talk. Okay. Chief Bimbo, let me ask you, Chief Bimbo. Chief Bimbo, let me ask you. You said that there are many instances you can give us and examples of corruption that's within the masses. What steps do you think Nigeria needs to be taking now? So next year, when we are having this gathering, we can say that we've jumped and we are now better.
So we're going to be having elections in the next couple of weeks. I would have been a member of a team that was to visit Nigeria to campaign against violence and to sensitize the masses to go out and vote without being paid to vote. We need to start from the election. Unfortunately, this is not going ahead because we were to go with General Gowon, but for some reason it got delayed in London. So when I invited Yonga TV to come with us, actually. Election is in 2 weeks' time. A lot of the political parties will still be handing out money. That is corruption. So we need to start from somewhere. We need to start from somewhere. You see, I'm totally against focusing too much on government when it comes to fighting corruption. It is not just the government, it is even the civil society. Everybody, all of us, the first step
we all have to take responsibility.
We all have to take responsibility. Hiding.
Not giving that $10, Agnes.
I could go out and say nice things about Nigeria, okay? That's what I've done for the last 25 years. I was leader of the Nigerian community in the UK for about 5 years.
Kanuk.
For Kanuk. And I've been chairman of NDDIS for 6 years now. All I've been doing is promoting investment into Nigeria, saying nice things about my country, attracting investors. But there are times when we need to face each other and say the truth. The truth is that there's so much corruption in Nigeria. The average Nigerian doesn't think that the salary should be enough for him. And the government, so the government has a role to play in this, making sure that people get the right kind of salary. The civil society itself, we need the media to start a new campaign against cheating, against stealing. So that's a major thing.
We have to wrap. It's a very interesting discussion, and we are going to be talking about, your wages a little bit after the break. Time for another break now. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away. Hello and welcome back to Nigeria Decides. I'm Juliana Olayinka and I'm pleased to welcome back our panel. Now, supporters of the outgoing Lagos State Governor Akinwumi Ambode are protesting the Lagos House of Assembly's threat to impeach him for misconduct. Governor Ambode has been given a week to answer allegations that he's begun spending funds from a budget that has not been formally presented to the Assembly. Chief Bimbo, it just keeps getting worse and worse for this governor, you know. Some say this is the last public humiliation. Can you tell us a little bit about this story?
Well, we've just heard that the governor was supposed to present the budget of Lagos State, and then it didn't. It was a procedural issue between the governor.
That's what he's saying.
That is the general outlook.
Okay.
But beyond the saying, there's always been a crisis of confidence between the House of Assembly and the governor. Which resulted in the governor not being put forward for the second term. So I will say Nigeria looks to me to be a country that likes to generate unnecessary crisis because the timing also is wrong. So
when you say timing for what? Because
timing for impeachment, for example, if we're talking about impeachment now, for Lagos City, it's almost like a country. It's even as rich as even like some, more than a lot of West African countries. So it's like saying that we want to impeach. We want to impeach a governor 2 weeks to election time. That is like we're getting ready for another implosion.
It's a crisis that Nigeria doesn't need.
That we don't deserve.
Chief Bishop, what's your outlook on this situation?
Well, the situation in Lagos is actually a very complicated one. The complication started from the first instance when Lagosians were of the view that the governor was doing well in office.
Yes.
And suddenly, certain persons never wanted him back. So is our democracy about the people or about some individuals? And I think the situation in Lagos is much more about a certain few persons in the society than the generality of the people.
That's a very interesting view there. Do you think, because of course people were protesting in Lagos, they weren't happy that Ambode was, not going to be nominated to run for a second term, but then people kind of have forgiven him. I was in Lagos recently, and you can see, he's kind of handed over to Babajide Sanwo-Olu. We had his deputy candidate Hamzat on the show. Everything seemed to be rosy, and now this. Do you think it could have implications for the actual election?
Of course it will, but I miss when you talk about Lagos, you came from an outsider's perspective. You can never talk about Lagos without really thinking about Fashola, the former governor who did incredible.
Some would say it goes further back than that.
But for me, he did incredible things for that.
So you're not a fan of Ambode?
Not at all. Maybe because I haven't focused much on him. But Lagos is an important capital in Africa, as Chief says, and absolutely agree. We should not generate crisis that it shouldn't be there. I think focus on the real issues rather than impeaching somebody 2 weeks to an election.
Chief Bimbo, do you think it's likely he'll be impeached?
Well, in Nigeria, anything is possible in Nigeria.
Anything can happen. Even by the time this show
let me say this now. This is now I want to bring a correlation with what Chief Agbeze said with regards to, is it morally right, or is it legally right, or is it... so, if you look at the case of Onogen, what we're saying is that what the president is doing is actually right with regards to
morals, but not system.
But the process is wrong, right? In this situation, the process
is right,
but the morals
may be wrong.
So now we have a governor who, if it is true, has been spending money, the budget,
but not personally, not personal money. That's not the accusation.
By law, you have to present it to the House of Assembly.
Yes.
It has to be approved.
Yes.
So if you start to spend it, then you're spending it personally. That's what it means. So that may be wrong, but the timing, as far as I'm concerned,
is what's up for suspicion.
Well, for me, I don't think we should have two sets of rules for people in our country. I don't subscribe in any way to the question of timing. If anyone, either in Nigeria or any part of the world, does not respect the timing for committing the infraction, the time for the law to take its course should
timing is a good thing, and we have to move on from this story now. Timing.
I have to say this.
Okay, let's let you finish.
Yes, I have to say this. If Ambode, is in a hurry because his tenure is running out, to start spending into the 2019 appropriation bill, yes, before approval by the State House of Assembly, should we now ask the State House of Assembly to fold their arms and wait until his tenure is over before impeaching him? I don't think anybody will say that.
I think they should have invited him.
I think that's a good wrap up. That's a good wrap up of this subject.
If there was no politics, all they would have done was to say, no, your process is wrong, bring it to the National Assembly, and they will not talk about it.
So let's leave it to the House now.
He has a right to go to court to challenge whatever thing that is coming from the State House of Assembly if he feels that certain rules, certain laws are not being followed. Okay. The court is also there. The legislators are there to do their work. He is also there as a governor
Chief
to do his work.
Can we move on now?
Very well.
Thank you. Nigeria's National Labour Congress has welcomed the passing of the 30,000 naira new minimum wage bill that was passed by the House of Representatives on Tuesday. The bill still requires the consent of the Senate and President Buhari before it's passed into law. There still seems to be some confusion over whether the proposed new minimum wage will be 27,000 naira or 30,000 naira, which amounts to around $85 a month. $85 a month is absolutely crazy. Chief Bimbo, who are the kind of people that will be getting this kind of salary?
For me personally, I think most of the states in Nigeria are not viable.
What do you mean?
They're political creations. So what happens in Nigeria is that certain areas come together and they say they want to have a state of their own, for one reason or the other. And if you look at the state of the economies of each one of these states, many of them are not sustainable. A lot of the states...
What do you mean? Are you saying that they can't afford to pay this salary?
They cannot afford. I can tell you that a few states that I know, many of them are civil service states, which means that all they do is go to Abuja end of every month and they collect their federal allocation and pay salaries. And the governor runs one or two programs. And so we're circulating poverty in Nigeria. So one is, for me, perhaps in the future, we should be looking at merging some of these states to make them viable.
Chief Agbeche, do you believe that maybe one of the reasons why corruption is huge in Nigeria is purely because the wages are just too low? Everybody is looking for a dime, a naira, just to top up their salary because they can't afford it. They can't afford to send their children to school. They can't afford to get transport.
No, that is not correct. If we say that about those who are not earning, what about those who have earned so much and are still stealing?
Yes.
I think what is, okay, for instance, like the church leaders in Nigeria, they are very wealthy. They still continue to steal from the people. They continue to acquire more. I think what is very, very important in our country is a feeling, of nationhood and patriotism towards one another. It is time for our leaders, to begin to think about the people. And let me quickly correct one impression created by Chief, my colleague here. The minimum wage is not actually for people who are cleaners or people who are drivers. There are people who are employed by government, into forces at level 1. And there are people who come with those without certificates, climb the ladder at certain stage. Those with with certain qualification, first school level certificate. Nigeria is still a country where people still work without any form of qualification. It's a country where people still work with just SSC, and it's a place where people work with their graduate certification. But I think what is important, and like you mentioned earlier that some states are not viable, that is not correct. Look at it. In Nigeria, for instance, we have agencies and parastatals of government. The heads of these agencies take the same wage for all that they do, not minding the viability. Our governors in Nigeria all fly private jets, from their state capitals to Abuja for the slightest meetings, not minding what is coming in. So for the Nigerian worker, it is not about viability. It is not about what the people are taking. It is not about what is available. There's no state in Nigeria that cannot compete with the other state. For instance,
okay,
I just want to say something. Because Kebbi State and Jigawa State recently have proven that the states in the north are viable through agriculture.
Yes. I agree with you there. Let me bring Agnes in on this one. $85 a month, Agnes, is that enough?
Depending on the economy, you ask whether Nigeria, let me respond to your question. Can Nigeria afford? Certainly can afford. It's one of the richest economies in Africa, if not the world. So rich yet so poor. And it comes back to what my panelists are saying about governance and managing our economy. So I throw in Spanier here, Moghalu economics. Moghalu has said it's not just about economic growth, it's about developing and ensuring that we pull every Nigerian together. Yes, you grow at a rate of 5% per annum. That doesn't mean anything to the ordinary people earning $85 a month. But it's a right move to have this.
We hope it's going to be $85 a month.
I do hope that the Senate and the President signs it, because you asked about timeliness. This is timely, and I think if they sign, this will gonna give them votes.
It will go.
Yeah, exactly.
It will go in favor.
So it's timely. This is the perfect
knows?
Timing to pass this bill.
Well,
okay, we'll take a quick break now. We have a lot more to discuss, so please join us in a few moments. Hello and welcome back to Nigeria Decides. I'm Juliana Olayinka, and I'm pleased to welcome back our panel, political analyst Chief Philip Agbeche, international trade and investment advisor Agnes Gitao, and CEO of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit, Chief Bimbo Folayan Roberts. The PDP have rejected an election tribunal's ruling on the outcome of the Ekiti governorship election. Earlier this week, the tribunal declared the APC candidate, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, the winner of last year's ballot, dismissing the suit filed by the PDP candidate, Professor Kolakbo Olushola Eleka. Professor Eleka previously filed a petition against Fayemi, claiming the vote had been subjected to several irregularities and malpractice. Nigeria's main opposition parties say they will take the decision to the Court of Appeal. I think, as our Ekiti man, it's only fair that I come to you, Chief Bimbo. This story has been erupting. Of course, it kind of died down with all of the campaign of the main election, but this is quite a serious ruling, isn't it?
It is. I believe that elections in Nigeria, there are hardly winners or losers in elections.
Everybody can't win. Everybody can't
By the way
win.
politics is played in Nigeria,
Okay.
it's so bad that during the last governorship elections in Ekiti,
This
one, every one of us witnessed the irregularities on both sides.
On both. That's what INEC have said. Both sides.
So, in a decent society, honestly, if Nigeria had the resources, I would have said both the PDP and the APC, both candidates, they paid the voters to vote. So as far as I'm
That's
concerned,
undisputed. It's allegations, but undisputed.
The videos are there. The people who were on the ground, we saw it. Everybody saw it. So maybe PDP was paying 400 and the APC was paying 500 naira to beat. And
4,000, 5,000.
Maybe things like that. So the election was not free, was not fair. But then each one of the two could have won the election. So who knows?
It was so close. I think we are talking about a dispute of about 20,000
It was
votes.
just a little bit of, So it was very close. I would say to PDP, no, they should allow the governor
to rule.
To rule.
So what are you saying? What are you saying, Agnes?
Yeah.
The official election board have ruled that both sides were playing with malpractice. Fayemi has come out as the winner with about 20,000 votes. What are you saying? Are you saying that it should be taken again? What are you saying?
I think we need to go back to the feeling that the winner takes it all. So the feeling that the new governor does not represent the will of Ekiti people, and that's so wrong. You know,
that's the same in every country around the world. We're in UK. Look at Brexit.
But then, does democracy work for Africa, whereby one leader wins against another? Everybody thinks, no, you don't represent me, purely because I don't come from the same party. The governor should be able to serve the people of Ekiti. But you, as Chief Bimbo says, two wrongs don't make a right. These two governors, because they both participated in election rigging, should really not be participating in this election.
It's very interesting. Do you think this is the writing on the wall for the presidential election just 2 weeks away? There could be a dispute?
The election in Ekiti?
Yes.
The result of the poll in Ekiti? Well, the loser at the court of first instance has signified his intention to go to the higher court.
Yes.
That would also deepen our democracy. It would deepen our jurisprudence.
Okay, you think he should accept?
But he rigged.
He should accept the results.
No, it doesn't matter. You see, it doesn't matter.
It wasn't rigged.
Yes, it doesn't matter who. The official position of INEC and the position of the law today is that a winner emerged from that contest. Secondly, losers emerge from that contest, but the closest loser is Professor Eleka, and Professor Eleka has clearly told his supporters and the people of Ekiti State that he would be challenging this ruling at the appeal court. For me, it is a welcome development if he has got the resources to go to the appeal court and even to the Supreme Court, because these things, they help to deepen our democracy. The fact that people carried out vote buying, let the court decide the implication of vote buying on the result. And I think if not until the matter eventually gets to the Supreme Court, we will not know, the true position of our laws on vote buying.
So how do you think Fayemi has come out of this? Do you think he's come out of it unscathed? Some people even thought he was even greedy. After being minister, now stopping that to go and run in Ekiti.
I don't think there's anything wrong in anybody aspiring to take offices. He was governor, he became minister, went back as governor. So which means that maybe he's interested in governing his people. So that's as far as I'm concerned, I think it's good. The only issue is that, for me, I would say whoever wins this case, it will, in the end, mean nothing. Because everybody's saying this election, these were the two candidates, two main candidates. And both of them participated in the irregularities that took place throughout the electioneering. There was vote buying. People saw it openly. So regardless of what happens at the appeal courts, or even when they get to the Supreme Court, whoever wins at the end of the day, it's still going to be the same. So we don't have real democracy yet. And I think, just like you were saying the other time, are we really ready for democracy? You could see the extent of bitterness, even that is taking place in Nigeria today. You need to be on Facebook to see people calling, each other names.
It's very personal.
And it's very personal. And the diaspora has been brought into this battle.
Of course.
And I have people who use words the worst you would never believe.
Words I don't want you to use here. But what do you think?
Opponents.
If INEC, Agnes, have said that there was vote buying on both sides, they saw it, the international observers saw it, and they have still ruled that Fayemi has won this election.
Exactly.
What does this have to say about the
main
main election?
Absolutely. It just paints a horrible, horrible picture. And that I bring back to a question, does democracy work for us? You know, why does a governor feel that he has to buy votes for people to vote for him? Why should he run for that position if he has to bribe people to vote for him? It is a shame, and I do hope that this is not going to be what's going to happen in 2 weeks.
We all hope it's not going to repeat itself. And let's talk about another case that's been in court, which is Donald Duke and the SDP. He's now been reinstated as their presidential candidate. Too little, too late.
But Nigeria, despite its complexity, you know, we have certain things that have been working for a period of time. And that is the question of zoning. Donald Duke is a candidate who is running against the tide. Yes, right now, why I said we have candidates and other candidates, the consensus at the moment is that the presidency remains in the north. Donald Duke is from the other side, and majority of the candidates from this side. No, he's a Nigerian, he has a right. But you see, sometimes, Goodluck Jonathan tried it against the tide. In fact, it was in 2015, for the first time in Nigeria, that, you know, a party's constitution was being violated. And the question of Donald Duke, again, you know, has to do with the party constitution, where Professor Jerry Garner is alleging that the presidential candidate of the party and the national chairman of the party cannot come from the same zone.
Yes.
Some of these differences and complexity are the things that have made us a very beautiful country.
Please,
Donald Duke. About that.
Yes.
Donald Duke.
We're talking about him. We're talking about him.
However, it is a matter
Let's pass the baton.
But I think either INEC, I don't know the kind of law that is establishing, and maybe they have the power, or the National Assembly should enact a law that makes it compulsory for all the Nigerian political parties to get all the political parties to sync their zonal arrangements in general. Because what we have
Explain
now,
that for the viewers that won't understand.
Let me explain it, because in Nigeria now it's the turn of the north. By virtue of the leadership that we had Jonathan was from the south. Now President Buhari is there. Another northerner has to go another 4 years, whether it's President Buhari or somebody else. Because of the peculiar nature of Nigeria, the geographical setting, we need to have a system whereby people from different parts of Nigeria have a sense of belonging. Yeah. They believe that this is our country, I can become president tomorrow.
Yes.
But if we have a situation where the major political parties are always fielding people, or they're fielding people from different parts of the country, and then accidentally, the same people from a particular part of the country starts to win election. That brings confusion. So
will that happen in our lifetime? I'm not sure.
Let me explain it a little bit
very
more.
briefly, because we're wrapping up.
Because APC right now is presenting two northerners. PDP is presenting a northerner. Sorry, presenting
APC
a northerner.
is not presenting
a northerner, which President Buhari.
Okay, APC and PDP both have northerners as the front runners.
Because the Nigerians believe now that the next 4 years still belongs to the north. So in Donald Duke's case,
yes, thank you. Bring it back.
He's from the south, and this comes back to the position of his political party. Yes. Why did they allow him in the first place to become their candidate? Do you understand what I'm saying? So somebody, Jerry Garner, who contested against him, should have been the one represent, because he's from the north.
Thank you. Thank you very much for explaining it to us. We are going to wrap up. What a lively panel. Into you, Chief. Thank you so much, guys. Well, that's all we have time for on this edition of Nigeria Decides. Don't forget to follow us at RealJHUK on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Juliana Olayinka, and from the entire team here in London, goodbye and thank you for watching Nigeria Decides.